Hello.
Hello, hello. We are live. Wow, Laura, it's been a hot minute since I've been live or since either of us have been live. I can't even remember the last time I went live. Maybe it was when Buzzsprout did the analytics, the 2023. I think that's the last time that I went live on LinkedIn. So I'm really excited to be here because, as you guys know, I love going live. So let's start with some introductions. Hey guys, I'm Mary Faye Brandt, co-host of the Redefine Your Career Journey, and I'm here with, oh, did I do that right? That way.
There you go. There you go. This way.
I'm here
So
with
I'm
my
Laura
trusty
Bayshore.
co-host.
I'm Laura Bayshore. I am the co-host of the Redefine Your Career Journey podcast. And to your point, Mary, it has been a while since we've been live, and I'm used to being live audio at this time in the morning, not with video. So forgive me in my dark cave. It's raining here though in San Diego. You know, it's time for the atmospheric river. So
Right.
there's
Do I need to
that.
send you a boat? I've got 2 kayaks in my backyard. What
Well,
do we need to
yeah.
send you? Because I understand San Diego is a disaster zone. We've got
Yeah,
flooding going on, and it's
we
I mean,
do.
we're laughing right now, but it's pretty darn serious.
It is pretty serious. Yeah, we're working with some nonprofits to get funds out to some families that have been
Oh,
devastated by it. But on the flip side of it, I've got a whole week lined up with my children in the house. And so, just put special thoughts out there for me because it's going to be
oh, you
rough.
get your kids in
It's,
the house for a week. Oh, that's gonna be
yeah.
fun.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
much
It'll
fun.
be lots of fun. Yes.
Well, you guys, we're just really excited to bring back our ever popular Ask Us Anything episode. And so we want you to
Yeah.
drop your questions in the comments about anything career related. So, resumes, interviews, personal branding, working with recruiters, excuse me, LinkedIn, of course. What's the job market look like? And I think, Laura, what we want to kick the show off with is what is going on in the job market. And I think on Friday there was some big news and we were all talking about that. Do you want to kick off the episode today with those
Yeah.
statistics?
Yeah, it's so interesting because in our first episode of January, we're going to talk about job market, but little did we know that going into the latter last week of January and beginning of February, we'd have crazy statistics. That is something that everybody's talking about right now. So if you haven't heard, the US economy is just on fire right now. So we were projected to add 187,000 jobs. Uh, However, we've more than doubled that with 353 jobs already in January. So it's just, I'm being asked all the time, what's the job market like? And I'm glad we're going to talk a little bit more about that today because, the answer to that really is depends. It always kind of
Yeah,
depends, right?
it always
Yeah.
depends on the industry, location, and I think that's interesting. The job market, they added what 353,000 jobs
Yeah.
in January because in one of our podcasts we also talked about that in the tech industry by January 17th there were like 10 tech companies laying people off in astronomical
Yes.
numbers. And I believe wholeheartedly that that's actually the fallout of the pandemic because the pandemic hit us and tech was such an important role for people to work from home, the Zoom, the video, and all of that. So they hired, and now we're balancing off. So I want to talk a little more before we get into the ask us anything questions. I want to talk a little more about that tech industry. Venture Fizz, which is an industry leader for jobs and careers in tech, released their
Yes.
2024 tech industry hiring predictions and poll results. And here's what they said. Following a challenging period marked by significant layoffs starting in 2022, continuing through 2023, The contributors are cautiously optimistic for 2024. With in 2023, there were 240,000 tech jobs lost. And at the beginning of 2024, just last month in January, we continued to see layoffs from like Amazon and Google and Microsoft. However, despite all of that, they're optimistic that we're going to start seeing hiring in tech, specifically tech, continue to come back to life, let's say. So if you're interested in that, we will put the article link in the show notes. But I thought that that was interesting that we had all these layoffs, and I think it's balancing out. But they really feel like it's going to stabilize and have moderate hiring growth in 2024 for the tech industry. And I feel like that's an industry that I get asked about a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I think because, we used to think of the tech industry as very linear, and it's not like that anymore. You can come into it at different spaces, just like in our episode when we were talking with Kyle about how there's different ways to be within the tech industry. You don't necessarily have to be the person who's providing the tech skill set, right? So that's one thing too. I have had my last 3 clients talking about the job market, right? One of them is somebody who's at the C-level in Silicon Valley. One of them is a client who was looking from transitioning out of the service restaurant industry and into SaaS, so selling selling software as a solution. And then my other one was somebody who was transitioning out of oh gosh, I can't think of it now because I haven't had enough coffee. But my whole point here was I have 3 different clients within the last month and a half who are transitioning into different industries, doing something different within their field. And it really hones in that the market is yours to move through as long as you know what your transferable skills are. I guess that was my main point.
You've got to know what your transferable skills are. So I just was working with a woman, just a consultation call. She went from HR and she just took a position in tech. And I feel like, oh, that's very different. Like HR, you get certified and trained and all that. And now she wants to move into tech. So I wonder, Laura, why we're discussing this, how AI is going to play a role in in the tech industry, because the companies in 2024, I think it was like 83% already said that, yes, they're going to implement some type of AI in their business. And something like 37% already have, right? And so I'm wondering how AI is going to play a role in the job market.
Well, to your point, even we were just at PodFest, right? Just last week, which is insane to me. I feel like the week coming back went really, really
We had
fast.
our first professional sleepover, and that was so amazing being at PodFest and being in person, because you guys, we live in 2 different states. And just for our viewers, like, we realized we met on LinkedIn, but we've only been in person, I think, 4 times. 4 times.
Yeah. And then we just did a crash course, full on sleepover everything, and it went well. So that was good. We have lots of fun stories to share about that. But what I wanted to say was I was not surprised, but I guess just I was aware of how much we were all discussing AI and how much all of the different speakers that we went in to see, or the panels, were discussing how to integrate this. And this was at every level. And then I even went in to see one of the ex-CEOs of TEDx, and her thing got changed at the last minute. But what did she end up doing? She's like, well, let's talk about a hot topic. And she just opened up her laptop and pulled up Chat GPT and then started showing how you can integrate with that and how you can start to make a persona and talk back to it. And so it's just interesting to your point. If you don't think that AI is important in your job, you're going to be behind. It's one of those things like when the computer came. This is what we're doing now. We've got to get on board. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
That's
what I
important.
relate it to, is that, you're going to be a dinosaur. If you're not, now, you don't have to use AI in all of your life, but as a career professional, as a business owner, you should be wrapping your head about how you can use AI. Because especially if you're a career professional, if you're going even in HR, how can you use AI to be more efficient, right? And so I
Yeah.
really feel like, it's the computers all over again, right? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, the computers are going to take over our jobs. No, they're not. They're going to enhance our jobs. Look at us now. I mean, I lived through that. Like, I learned how to type, you guys, and not on a keyboard, on a typewriter. Let me tell you, computers have made everything easier. So we've got Jerry joining us. I love your glasses, Mary. Thank you. These are peepers. They're Oprah's favorite. I don't get anything
Oh,
for
Oprah.
saying that. I know. It's the new pencil. What's the new pencil? The AI? Maybe. But talking about work, the landscape of the job market, another big topic is remote work. It's here to stay, folks, and more companies are embracing it. It took a while. I mean, literally, it took, I want to say, 3 years. 2020, right? I
Yes.
mean, it's been here, but for it to be a mainstream. So we're going to see little change in the job market and the work from home levels. It's going to become where working from home is 5 times more common than 5 years ago in 2019. Of course it is. And furthermore, with the
Yeah.
tons of faster growing companies, they're going to adopt the flexible working patterns that the career professionals want. Because in order to attract top talent, you need to have some kind of flexibility, even if it's hybrid. But I feel like everyone I work with, they don't want to be in the office 5 days. They don't mind like one day, but or maybe 2 days, but they do not want to be in an office 5 days a week. So the caveat being that flexible work refers to how people work rather than the work they do. And I was just on an audio event with Andy Foote, which some of our listeners might know. He's very active on LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
we're asked as a co-host to bring two newsworthy stories that we want to talk about. Well, I brought this one and we couldn't even get to the next one because everybody
Yeah.
wanted to
I
talk
believe
about
it.
remote work.
I was just at the San Diego Business Summit and I was on their panel talking about how to manage hybrid work. And to your point, the level or the depth of the questions that I was getting from the audience really shows that people are trying to make that shift of understanding that this is the new way of doing work. I found that one of the big concerns, both for employees and employers, was how do you move up? How do you get seen when the whole point is to try to be as efficient and seamless as you can? And so it's difficult um, for them to understand how do you make yourself stand out and not become something that's coming as a nuisance. And so what we discussed was the leadership needs to set up what those boundaries are. So, for example, some decisions were being made within this organization and they were being made on site. And leadership felt like, well, if the other people wanted to be here, they could have shown up and they would be in on the decision, which then discredits those who may be contributing a lot. But
Yeah.
because their presence isn't there, you're discrediting it. So we talked about, setting up a set time because I agree. It's important to come in and get that face time. You can't just be completely remote unless it's an organization, in my opinion, that's really been doing it before pandemic.
Like
And so they were already
Zapier
structured.
isn't
Yeah.
Zapier 100% remote. Oh, I hear some
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
It
Uh-oh.
might be on your end. Um, so Jerry's joining us. Jerry, we're gonna get to you in just a moment. So the whole point of remote work, one question that we get asked a lot is, what can I do to stand out? How, getting promoted as a remote worker and being in front of your boss and the boss's boss and the people that make the decisions, it's really important. So if all you're doing is working at your desk at home and you're not interacting on this, if you're on a Zoom call, put your camera on. Let them see your face, right? If there's an opportunity for you to go into the office, go into the office. On a personal note, even if you're not a remote worker, being seen by the right people is important. So I'm not going to say who, but there's someone that works the night shift. If you know, you know. And their boss said, you know, going to the day shift will get you in front of a different group of managers that can help you get promoted. Okay, so
Yeah.
even just in this situation, moving to a different shift is going to help this person get in front of a different set of managers. And I'm talking like plant managers, operations managers, and their boss was saying, I think this is the right move for you. So it's about being in front of the right people. And Laura, oh my gosh, so I'm really passionate about this because I was listening to like a master class, and I don't remember all the stats, but did you know that your skill set is not the most important thing to get you promoted? Being visibility is. Being in front of the people was like kind of higher weight than your skill set. And I was like, bingo.
Yeah. I do know that because that is how I navigated my career. I would get asked all the time by my colleagues, how is it that, you know, your ideas are getting put forward, or how is it that, you know, you're not even in the office as often as I am, but you're up for promotions or people are looking at you. And it's being strategic with your FaceTime, figuring out who are the people I need to be in front of, and then how do I get myself in front of them in a productive way. You know, you have to have something to say, you have to have a reason for being there. And so it's just, my personality is I'm observant, but I'm only observant to a point. Like when I know that I need to be speaking up and that I'm not doing it, I kind of mentally check myself and say, okay, how am I going to get in on the conversation now? Because I need to be in on the conversation. So it's kind of knowing that it's that whole don't wait your turn. Be strategic and get your points across.
FaceTime, not FaceTime on your phone,
Yeah.
FaceTime with your
No.
manager.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Not on your
so
phone.
yeah, the other question that I think that we get asked a lot is interviews. Like,
Oh
how do I
yeah.
prep for the interview? And we had a question like, what one of the questions submitted prior to the show, and thank you for submitting it, is like, what's a great question to ask during the interview? So, Laura, do you want to kick us off with that?
Yes, absolutely. Before I do that, I'm just sharing that we're live. I'm just making sure real quick.
Oh,
So forgive me. I'm
okay.
not being rude on my phone. I'm not being a
You
millennial on my phone. Okay.
you do
It's
that. You
it's
know what? I'm going to talk
it's
about Jerry.
important.
So Jerry joined us, and he accepted what he thought was going to be his last job. Here's where the story goes, Laura. They waited a month for
Okay.
me to start. Okay, that's okay. There's onboarding and all that. 2 days in, his manager was already irritated that he was asking questions. There was zero training, zero onboarding, and then he got fired on Friday. So, first off, Jerry, I'm sorry
Wow.
that you went through this because that's awful. I think there are probably some red flags. Like, did we ask what the onboarding was? Did we ask what training, and not knowing the company, the industry, or any of that? Generally speaking, I want to know what the onboarding is, who am I working with, what's the turnaround, my processes, where's my checklist, right? I'm a checklist person. I need to do this, this, and this. I don't think the red flag is they waited a month, because it does take time to, you know, dot your I's and cross your T's when you're hiring someone, all the paperwork.
Yeah.
But that there was no training. Okay, he just said it was a large nonprofit. So with nonprofits,
Well, that, yeah, you can see both Mary and I go, oh, okay. So we support nonprofits a lot. I'm on a board of a nonprofit here called Classics for Kids in San Diego, and I also contribute to a lot of them. But both Mary and I have worked closely with nonprofits before, sometimes on the inside, maybe through contracting, and sometimes on the
yes,
outside through partnerships.
yes.
But um, nonprofits are notorious for things are bootstrapped, and you're going to walk in and find that your training is bootstrapped as well. I want to
Processes
kind of back
are
it.
minimal.
Well, I
Processes.
want to kind of back it up to what you were saying, Mary, where you were asking me to talk about the interview. So one of the things, Jerry, is a great question to ask, because don't get discouraged by the industry. Like, we need people who are great to be inside a nonprofit so that they can thrive. But how we can make sure that we also thrive there too, and aren't just thrown in and then expected to have miracles occur, and then when they don't, within 30 days, taken out. In the interview, ask, what's your onboarding like? What's the training like? What can I expect so that I come in ready to hit the ground running? And at that point, they may have said, well, it's going to be a lot of shadowing. As somebody who's come into organizations with shadowing training, I can tell you, I went from corporate into a state and federally funded organization that got a lot of funding from nonprofit stream. So it was similar in the vein of, we had people who had been there in there for a long time, and it was kind of like, you're just going to shadow and learn it. So I took a binder and I just started writing everything down. And it's funny because when me and Mary first met, we had a conversation about doing this both at our jobs before. I just started making my own training manual. So you kind of, when you see it's not happening, you kind of take control in that way, and then start asking people to give you those answers to the questions that you have. Create that manual, and then instead, when that conversation came up with your employer, you might have been able to say, hey, you know what? There wasn't a clear process. Here's what I've started to put together. Did you want to review that? And maybe we can come up with something and get things really on track. So that would be
Excellent.
my
He
suggestion.
says that that's what he did. Then it just might not be the right nonprofit for
Yes,
you at this time. But nonprofits are known
exactly.
for bootstrapping and not having all their processes in check. So it's really important. I always like to talk to other people in the office as well, because even if they don't say something verbally, you can tell by their body language.
That's
If you
true.
if they're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, processes are really good here, but they don't elaborate, then that's probably a red sign, right? So let's continue
Yeah.
on the interview questions, Laura. Are there any other
Sure.
interview questions that you know you
Yeah.
think that someone should
Absolutely.
ask, or that you're like
Absolutely.
someone? Okay, I know
Don't
that
ask.
this is
Yeah.
your thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it shows that you're going to be collaborative from the onset, and it almost like how we're always talking about, you got to negotiate your salary, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but also you have to have a question for the interviewer. So I like to keep a couple of them on stock on hand, right? So a great one is, I like this one that's been put in here, which is, how could I impress you in the first 3 months? You're kind of asking them what's the expectations without saying what is the expectation. You have to understand that your verbiage is really important when you're in the interview. And by saying, how can I impress you? You're asking what you can do for them instead of what they can do for you. If you say expectation, now you're talking about what they can do for you. And in their head, they're turned off and they're thinking, well, I brought you in for an interview, so I'm doing that. Right? So I think that's a great one to ask. Um, the one that I always ask, because I want to know what's going on, is, when are you looking to make your decision? It has helped me from not spinning, and having many sleepless nights after an interview thinking, when will I hear back? When will I hear back? Hi, Anne. Anne just joined. So
Hi, Anne.
you want to know when you're going to hear back, and that's a way you can ask it without getting too involved. And off of that question, I've had people who are interviewing me let me know, hey, it's down to you and one other candidate. And then that opened the door for me to say, oh, well, what other questions can I answer for you that maybe you still have about me, since it's down to me and one other person? Um,
Can I
Likewise,
interject on that? can I say
Yeah.
when you said, oh, it's down to 2 people, right? You know, a question
Hmm.
I like to ask: are there internal candidates applying? Because that lets you know a lot of times the companies post the
Realistically,
right. Oh yes, we have internal candidates. So then I'm like, okay, a lot of times the companies post the job, put people through the interview, and I'm just being honest, with their attention being on hiring the internal candidate, but they have to publicly post that.
yes, because you have to, for many
It
organization,
happens.
there is a rule that well, it's a rule. You have to bring
Yep.
in 7 people. So, whether or not you already know who you're hiring, you still have to bring in 7 other candidates. You can't just go with that one. So, depending on how on the up and up the organization is and how much, auditing is done with them, yeah, they're gonna go in and do their due diligence because they need to make sure that they are CYA.
TYA.
Uh,
I also like, I don't think that you said this question. I like the question is, why is this position open? Is it a new position? Did someone leave? Did someone get promoted? I want to know what created this opening because I think that can really provide some insights. Maybe it's a new position because of growth or a different path that they're taking or a different service they're offering.
yeah. So on that, I would research the company first and maybe I would rephrase it to say, "Hey, I saw that this is possibly a newer position. Is that based off of your guys' growth?" The only reason I ask
Right.
that is because if you leave that question too open-ended, you might make them feel like they're on the hot seat. And you just have to be really skilled
How you how
in
you
your conversation.
how you
Yeah,
phrase it.
because, um, the best way I can say this is the more skilled interviewee, right? So the more confident you are in that, that's a great question to ask. But if you're nervous about your interview, I might caution that just because you could lead yourself into stumbling over it and it could
Yeah,
completely backfire. So I think practice and then yes, that's an excellent question because you do want to know what's going on in there and it kind of also helps to weed out the red flags like you were talking about earlier.
absolutely.
So I think that's good too.
Well,
Mhm.
let's move on to our next question that was submitted. But before we do that, if you guys want more information, you want to learn more about those tricky interview questions and how to answer those, we did a whole podcast on that. And that's episode 3. So just go to Redefine Your Career Journey. We're on all major platforms and check out episode 3 to learn more about how to answer those tricky interview questions. So Anne Small said, doing your research and being confident. I can't tell you how many people just think they're going to go in and do the interview with no prep. I'm just like,
Well,
that's just, I
yeah,
just want,
it's when people give you that answer to, "Why do you wanna work here?" And then they say, "My skill sets align with the job description." Okay.
so is
Yeah,
everyone
it's
else
not
that we're
good.
interviewing. Give me some more
Hopefully,
meat,
right? Yes, we have
right?
screened your
Hopefully.
resume, and that's why you're here.
Well, let's go to
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
next question that was submitted is, you know what? I know you've come across this, Laura, where clients
Yeah.
like they're looking for a job, their company they're working for, they had a review or they asked for a raise, they showed all this work they're doing, they increased the bottom line, they brought in new clients, they streamlined the process, and their boss says, "Oh, we can't offer you a raise at this time. It's not in the budget." Basically saying we don't value you. And so you're like,
Yeah.
okay. And you go look for a new job. And then you get an offer from a new company. We'll call it the Kauai Coffee Company. They offer you a job, making more money. And you go back to the Folgers Coffee Company and they say, "Oh, well, we don't want you to leave, Laura. We can offer you a 5% increase." I know what I say about that, Laura. That's a big no. But would you like to?
Yes.
What I say, it's a no because they didn't value you from day one.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have the stats pulled up in front of me, so I can't quote exactly who it's from, but what I can say, if you just Google this, you'll find it too. Those who accept a counter offer from their current employer usually end up leaving within the next 12 months anyways, because your reasoning for wanting to leave in the first place, of course money was tied to it, but it's exactly what you said, which is that they are not being valued.
I just pulled up the stats
Period.
because you
Oh
know that we
yeah.
like to give you stats. We back up what we say with uh, references, articles, and stats. So around 50% of the people that accept a counter offer leave for a new job within 12 months.
There you
So
go.
yeah, so our answer is no. If they didn't value the work, if they didn't value you and the work that you've been doing, and you went in and showed them the work, showed them the proof, you had a professional conversation, and they're just like, sorry, can't do that. And then all of a sudden, 30 days, 6 weeks, 2 months later, when you come back and put in your resignation, and they want, all of a sudden they have a magic pot of gold and they're going to give you that
Yeah,
raise. I'm sorry. You're trying to
exactly.
save your butt because you know how hard I work and what I bring to the table. You should have appreciated me and valued me when I came to you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% on point. I have another question that came through about salaries. Is that all right if
Oh,
I bring
yeah. Let's dive
so
into salaries.
so people talk about salary negotiation. So one of my clients was asking me, he was going to a new company. So he's in the entertainment industry and he does the cloud space for setting up events, making sure
Mhm.
everything's going off the way it needs to. And uh, he's being brought into a company that's kind of trying to get some market saturation. They're trying to be the disruptor. He's really excited about it. And they offer him a salary that he told me, he said, Laura, I've been listening to you. I follow what you're saying. And he said, but really at this point, I like the salary. I'm comfortable with what they're offering me. It's a good salary. And he said, but I remember you told me I should always be negotiating. I have no idea what I should be doing. And so I talked to him about negotiating outside of money. It's not always
Absolutely. It's
monetary.
my favorite thing, actually. I prefer to
Yeah,
negotiate time off.
right.
In the
And this
corporate
is some of the
world,
things we talked about. Yes. And so we talked about, okay, maybe you want an extra week of vacation. And he's like, well, honestly, that's really not something that I'm interested in. I said, okay, well, tell me about some of the differences. Because although you like the salary, there's got to be some differences between what's going on. And then he said, well, the stock option, because this is a newer organization, is not commensurate with the stock option that I had at my previous employer. I said, there it is. That is what it is. And he said, well, they've been upfront that they don't have the ability to do that yet. And then I said, well, you know what? It sounds like you're going to be building out this whole team, this whole operation. I said, I think what we need to do is set the standard of, I'd like a 90-day evaluation, because after 90 days, I'm going to have more responsibilities. I will have built up a team. Things will be functioning here. And at that point, we should be able to project where we're going this year. Once we're there, I'd like to renegotiate salary and take a look at those stock options again. So he went in and did that, and so he's got that happening, and I love that when my clients are saying they're happy with the salary that's coming in, or they're doing a 180 transition and they know that they need to prove themselves a little bit in this new space. 90-day evaluation. Get it
I
in
love that.
writing in your offer. Let's get that going because it's really going to make a difference and help you continue to feel valued at your newer position.
I love all of that. 90-day evaluation. One of the things that I actually have always negotiated was uh, a little bit on pay, but more so was, and more so it was time off for me, right? So
I would do that too. I like time off.
so I negotiated time off twice. So when I was working at Bishop School, I negotiated that I started with 4 weeks of vacation time. And after working there
That's
my
great.
first year and how, yeah, yeah, people are like, what? I'm like, you just have to ask. Vacation is a soft cost, it's not a hard cost, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so I
Yep.
negotiated 4 weeks off, which is what the C-level people got. And they were like, what? I go, well, I work for the head of school and the board of trustees. I'm C-level, so I
Yeah.
want my 4 weeks.
Exactly.
And then it was so friggin' busy after my first year, I negotiated an extra week. So I was like, look,
Wow.
this time right before graduation. So what I phrased it, or I packaged it right before, starting in April at a private school. You've got awards and senior night and a more awards night, and you've got sports banquets, and then you've got graduation. And my office was in charge of a lot of that, diplomas, ordering diplomas, right? All that. So I was like, look, I need a week off before that last push to the end of the year. So I negotiated an extra week. So I have 5 weeks vacation. And so I just want to
Right.
really enforce that. To me, for me, to, pay is important, but time off, like, that is super important. So I have enough time to take off for, whatever I want, vacation. But I also negotiated when I worked at a bank. I went in and I said, well, I had 5 weeks vacation. And the CEO is like, well, our CEOs, our C-level start with 4 weeks. Can you do that? I'm like, I can start with 4 weeks, but just know that
I love it. I could start there. Sure.
I'll start.
Okay.
Because I know that might sound far fetched, because the standard is 2 weeks, and that's just not enough. It's not
I
enough.
agree. I agree. It's not enough. So I think there's a lot of space we could do around salary negotiations. And if you're looking for help on that, reach out to us, go to our website or drop us something here because it's important to understand how to navigate those things. And it's not just always about money.
Yeah. And said, special request, Mary Brent and Laura Bayshore. Let me see. Let me add the podcast to YouTube so I can watch you on TV, because she wants to see our beautiful faces this early. Well, we
It's,
are,
it's coming. It's coming down the
yeah,
pipeline.
I'm
And
live on my YouTube station, but we do have some announcements coming up, I don't know, in the next 6 weeks. And we will have a dedicated YouTube channel for our podcast soon. But thank you, Anne. You are the best. We will talk after the show, of course. So we've talked about interviews, we've talked about remote, we talked about salary negotiation, we talked about the job market, we talked about nonprofits and the questions that you really need to ask before you even, get your foot in the door. I've got a question for our audience. Would you like to see us once a month? So if you're watching the replay, awesome. Type in hashtag replay, drop your question, because Laura and I will go back and answer your questions. And we want to know, do you want to see us live once a month, whether it's interactive, you guys asking your questions? But we really, I think what we miss, Laura, is that interaction with our audience. And so
yeah,
we're doing this to provide guidance to our network. And so we want to know, do you guys want to see us once a month? Let us know. What else do you want to add to today's live episode, Laura? What other questions?
I just want to offer this up that we are still dropping this on our podcast. So, although
Yes.
we are streaming live, this will be available later this afternoon. So, a little bit later than you guys are used to, but you're still going to get your Monday fill of Laura and Mary and all the career advice that we can offer up. And I also need more coffee because
I agree. So
it's
Jeffrey says, I'd love to see you twice a month. Okay. And Anne says, yes, once a month would be great. Can we take a poll on times? We can absolutely take a poll on times. A little piece of advice: if you're thinking of, doing a podcast, doing a live show, doing an audio event, it always has to be at a time that works for you, because otherwise you won't show up. It'll be too tedious. But yes, Anne, Laura would probably like it a little later, because 7 o'clock her time's a little early. We're trying to reach
Yeah.
at least, the plethora of people that we can reach. So, but we will do a poll. Thank you, Anne. I'll go ahead and get that drafted up. I love this.
Yeah.
Jeffrey's like coffee. Like, you guys see my cup. Best day ever. Because
Yeah.
look how big this coffee cup is.
That's good. That's a good size. I like it. Yeah, and then I think the last thing that we'll say before we sign off for today is so look, I'm wearing this little Buzzsprout shirt.
I know.
I just wanted to say that Buzzsprout is an amazing platform host to use for your podcast. So if you're thinking about getting into podcasting or switching over to something that's easier, if you're not extremely tech savvy, come on over to Buzzsprout. I love that Mary and I met them when we were at the Podfest last week, and we are beta testing an app for
I
them.
know.
So you can have all the great stuff that you need as a podcasting host at the touch of your hand. And I really love it so far. So shout out to Buzzsprout. And
I love Buzzsprout.
any
And
more
Podfest was amazing. We got to meet some amazing business owners, career professionals. And for me, it was the networking and the sessions where we learned. Like, I am now listening to a couple new podcasts. I listened to one this morning while I was getting ready, and I have to go back because there was 2 nuggets in there that I have to create a post about. 2 nuggets that were so amazing. And one of them has to do with perfection. Done is better than perfect, right? I say that all the time, but he said it a little differently. And I'm like, ooh, I like that twist. Anne says, I'm with Laura, a little later helps. And Anne's in Texas, so it's already later there, Anne. It's like almost 9:42. It's an hour ahead, I think. And yes, and we have a referral code. So let us save you a little money, do some introductions, whatever you need. We'll send you a DM and give that to you because they are an amazing platform. I feel like pricing and features, amazing to start a podcast. Amazing.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's
Okay.
go get some coffee. You guys can listen to the replay. You can watch the replay or listen to it on our podcast platforms, wherever you listen to your podcast. And thanks for tuning in and spending your morning with us. Mary, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, so share and subscribe out, and we'll see you next time we go live. And thanks, Laura. It's time for a coffee refill.
All right.